It's Reiki, but not as you know it. Linda, there you are. I've been going
Hello.
round and round and round and round.
Yes, I'm sorry. I've been sitting in this nook by the fire, just observing people and waiting for you to get here. Interestingly, I went to the barman who's not here today for some reason, and there was this lovely lady who was just filling in for him. And she really didn't look like a barmaid in any shape or form. She looked more like a hedge witch, which was quite pleasant to me anyway. And she asked what I would like. And, I've just had a very choppy few days. Just things just didn't fall into place. And I asked her to just surprise me, to please give me something that would help me readjust. And she said, I have just the thing for you. And she ended up giving me an adaptogenic tonic. Do you know what that is?
I have no idea.
Interesting. It's herbal. And in this tonic was actually astragalus. And adaptogenics are interesting herbs. They know exactly what you need. So they give you a balance. They give you either nurturing or adjustment. And the main important thing is they help you recalibrate your whole being. And I'm thinking this is going to be pretty tasty. It's not, but the recalibration process is intriguing to me because, as we know, there's a lot of those words in what we practice.
Wow, I think I need me some of that. As I was whizzing around the bar, it was a bit like Pirates of the Caribbean because it's torrential rain out there, and I was a bit wet and a bit splashed. And as I was whizzing around, it was like whenever I've been on Pirates of the Caribbean, my favourite bit is when the Smellitzers blow out that smell of banana rum, they call it, and it's this lovely caramelly banana scent, which I love. So I've been sniffing that. So my tipple has been banana rum, which I haven't actually drunk. I've just been sniffing it on the way through. So some adaptative herbs.
Adaptogenic.
Some adaptogenic herbs would be absolutely perfect for today.
Well, it's better than a mushroom tipple.
Don't knock it till you've tried it.
Yeah. I'll take astragalus. I'm more of a root and berry and stick girl.
And I'm more of a fun guy. What is in this banana rum? So I have been dying to know, Linda. It's Reiki, but not as you know it. Why is that?
Well, I need to have a good discussion with you because let's start with attunements.
Oh, attunements. Or as we like to call them in the realms, orientation and calibrations.
Yes, indeed.
Before you experienced Celtic Reiki, had you heard of like attunements or anything like that before?
Yes, through others who had experienced it. And it was interesting because I was always perplexed by their explanation because it really had no meat to it. It was more of, oh, I had my Reiki attunement this weekend. And I would kind of look at them with an expression of, and, tell me more. And they really couldn't tell me much other than, well, the master was great and it was magical. I need more depth of description. And unfortunately, what stuck in my head and kind of put a bitter taste in my mouth about getting involved with what I know now is Usui Reiki, because back then Reiki was Reiki to me. I didn't really put a label on it, was the fact that I wasn't interacting. There was nothing for me to do. And I'm not one to just sit and, don't wave your magic wand and bop me in the head. I need to actively be involved because that's how I learned. I have to do something to really understand what it means and practice it. So unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of knowledge that I gained. And when I finally came to meet you in Celtic Reiki, it was heaven. It was, this is exactly what I wanted. This is exactly what I needed. Oh boy, I have a lot to learn. And yet it was wonderful because it fed me in a way that I was able to digest as I went along, and it just got bigger and better as time, and it still is. I mean, it still is. It's a never-ending process, which is wonderful.
I sort of came to orientations and calibrations after a very long journey with the idea of attunement, or entrainments, as I originally started to work with, because in Usui Reiki there is this idea of the attunement, so the communication of something that cannot be verbally explained, transmitted from one person to another, from the Usui Reiki master to their student, where they attune their student to Reiki so that they can channel it. There's lots of air bunnies going on. It's like Watership Down. It's so there was this idea in where a Reiki master will attune, or an Usui Reiki master will attune their student, and this never really sat well with me. Mainly because one of the things that I always found when I would teach is people would say to me, but what if it doesn't work?
Oh.
So we would talk about the attunements and they'd say, but what if it doesn't work for me? What if I don't get it? What if I are unable or unworthy in some way?
Oh my goodness.
And the standard answer to that in the Usui Reiki community is very often, oh, it will work. Which for me personally, I found a little bit controlling, a little bit sort of domineering. Oh, it will work. I will achieve.
I am powerful. Yes, yes. I will do this.
Yes. And absolutely, I do feel that attunements work, because we are all connected to Reiki anyway. We just aren't consciously aware of it. So it's there. It's just a question of actually knowing that we're there.
Right.
I think when I made that realization that it wasn't working because the Reiki master makes it work and does their hoodoo, but because a person is already connected, is already there, they just need to know it. I started working with the idea of entrainments and entraining a person, where there is a joint venture, shall we say. It's a bit like when somebody walks into a room where everyone's feeling a little bit down and a little bit mopey, and their happiness and their joy is so exuberant that everybody starts to feel a little bit better.
It's touchy.
Yeah, and that sort of that idea of sort of of entraining people. So the Asui Reiki master basically standing in that space and asserting their experience of Reiki to the point where everyone in that room had the ability to also
Right.
entrain to
Right.
that. And then it was a natural progression from this idea of entrainment where the master asserts, which still didn't sit right with me because it is quite a domineering sort of, I'm asserting this, all the way through to, well, what's really happening is that the modality master is saying, look over here, and the student's going, oh yeah. And that is the nature of orientation calibration. The trainer, the Sui Reiki master or one therapy trainer will say, look over here, this is what we're looking at today. And then the student calibrates to that. They're saying, where is this? Where is what's going on is going on? And when they get it and they reach it and they have a sensory experience of that or a conscious experience, it fixes and they know where to go from that point on.
It's very rewarding.
Mm.
From my perspective, being a trainer and orienting students or clients for that matter, it's a mutual exchange. It's a matter of, look over here, see what this is, but also the balance of, stepping into almost the receiver's end of the process of saying, okay, I need to meet them at their level. I want to show them something that is attractive and interesting. How do I adjust my presentation to meet them at that level? And so it's almost seesaw event where the student comes up to a higher level of understanding because you've provided them with the bits and pieces of what you want them to see and experience, and you actually go down a little bit lower so that you are taking on a different perspective as well. But it's a constant shifting. It's a expansive and contractive relationship. It's
Yeah.
not one waving the magic wand and saying, do this and you should be perfect because I'm going to give it to you perfect. No, it doesn't work that way. It's more about balance. It's more about give and take. It's part of the growth process for both the master and the student. It's never ending. And the thing that you mentioned is interesting. When the student or client calibrates, they calibrate based on that moment of understanding. As time goes on, your calibration never stops. Once you've been oriented, you continue to calibrate lifelong. And of course, as we go through life, we change, hopefully for the better, hopefully with more growth and expansion. So the next time that individual may experience bits and pieces of that orientation, their calibration is going to be different than the first time they experienced it because they're different.
Yes.
And so
And
their
that,
perspective has shifted.
and they've
And
assimilated all those experiences in the
yes,
meantime, so they're looking at it from a different perspective or
yes.
sensing it from a different perspective.
So it's not a matter of like, oh, I didn't see that before. No, you couldn't see it before because you weren't who you are now then.
Yeah.
And that's phenomenal to me. That's like such a bit of candy, like, oh, some more, please.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it amazes me because one of the other sides to the orientation calibration is when we look at Sui Reiki and the idea of attunements, the originator of Sui Reiki, Mikao Usui, had this experience, life-changing experience, and he equated it to his knowledge of the world. So his experiences in life, his cultural information, the shaping of his experiences through the environment he lived in. And then he passed that on to his students. So he showed them his perspective of what he called Reiki. And then one of his students, Dr. Hayashi, went through his attunement or his Reiju empowerments, as they were then known, and he grasped his perspective of Usui's perspective. And then one of his students, Mrs. Takata, who was instrumental in bringing Usui Reiki to the West, she had her perspective of Dr. Hayashi's perspective of Mikao Usui's perspective. So all this perspective is going on.
Yeah.
And in Usui Reiki, that's what we are learning through our lineage. Every Usui Reiki master in that lineage has shared their perspective. And when we come to V Reiki in One Therapy, we take a step back from that and say, right, let's not look at the one person's perspective.
Right.
Let's just look at it without perspective and try and give us more accurate a sort of an idea of this, a sensory idea of this. And in that process, it is like that balancing of the scales. I often see Reiki or experience Reiki as that force, as the scales are balancing out, and as gravity sort of creates that sense of balance within a scale. That force right there really embodies Reiki for me, in as much as there is this balancing between the V Reiki master and the V Reiki student, who are not necessarily going, here's my perspective, and they go, thank you very much, there you go, that's me calibrated. It's a sharing.
Yes.
It's in the middle of that balance. So the V Reiki master is altered and changes their perspective of Reiki because of that process, because of the learning in that process.
Yeah, the master is changing because of the student.
Yeah.
And the student is changing because of the master.
Absolutely.
So many times I've worked with students where, I know One Therapy from my perspective. Initially, when I went through the program, it was my perspective, delivered by you, but my perspective that formed my baseline foundation. As time has gone on, and I've either read journal entries or actually had some dialogues with students, seeing it through their eyes, it's like a multifaceted stone. You see one side and you go, ooh, shiny, pretty. And then someone says, yeah, but look at it from this angle and look at the rainbow colors or whatever. And there isn't one time that I ever came away from a conversation with a student where I thought, yeah, I know that. It was always, oh my goodness, I never thought of it that way. Or putting yourself in their shoes because of their life, their experiences, their traumas, whatever they may have encountered, that colors their perspective. And so when a healing element from, One Therapy, whichever part of the program it is, when that healing element comes to them, it bathes them in a way that helps them shift their perspective, that then in turn, as a master, you can say, oh, this is a good remedy to put in my bag, for a future conversation. It sometimes percolates up stuff within yourself to be able to say, oh my goodness, I never knew that was part of who I am as well. And healing can happen in that light too. So it's very fluid. There's no stop and go. It's just an ongoing flow. The stream just keeps flowing.
It reminds me of how One Therapy evolved from the starting out as an Usui Reiki master who was active in practitionership, working with people in treatments, and actually training other practitioners, and that constant immersion in the different perspectives that we encountered as master and student in those environments was really, really powerful. And it was through that constant connection and that constant adaptation and evolution that the foundations of one therapy were really created. A really powerful example for me was always how karmic Reiki came out of treatments and treating people who would feel icy cold, and the room would go icy cold, like someone had just turned air conditioning on, but like turned it up to 11. And it was like, this is freezing, but it would be instant. It would be an instant experience and be really uncomfortable, cold and nauseous and yuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And through those experiences, getting to realize there's something happening here, something specific and particular, and realizing that it was something karmic. It was a karmic state happening. And then that evolution of actually, well, how do I deal with this? How do I go from knowing it's a karmic state to actually understanding it? And that's how karmic Reiki was developed, now known as karmic regression therapy, because it's gone through many adaptations, many different versions of what we mean by karma, or miasma, or holographic KRT. And that all came out of those experiences through treating people.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear Asui Reiki clients, practitioners, masters talking about, oh, it gets really cold. Why is that? And there's many different perspectives, and it's all our own perspective. It's our own viewpoints where we see it from. But whenever I hear that, I'm thinking, oh, that sounds karmic. I wonder
exactly.
what's happening there. And it's fascinating and intriguing.
Yeah.
But it does come down to that recognition that we are not just attuned once and that's it.
Yes.
That we are constantly evolving and adapting and changing. And that curious mindset, that sense of curiosity of, oh, what's going on here, is so powerful, because it leads us on these amazing adventures.
It does. And, you know, the calibration process for me, and I think for many, you're a detective. You know, this week I had some situations where, you know, the brownies were running amok, and I had some tasks to accomplish and it wasn't happening. You know, one thing after another, and I did not accomplish the task. And, you know, prior to all of my experiences within one therapy, I would have just said, oh, it's not meant to be. I just shouldn't be doing this. And that's not the answer. You know, a lot of times it's, now I feel like a detective. I take a step back and say, okay, what's really going on here? What do I need to be paying attention? Perhaps I need to adjust or readjust, recalibrate to what I think I'm being led to do. It's never black and white. It's always to your point, it's exciting because, you know, you're digging, you're trying to find out what's behind this. You don't want to just take the surface of whatever you are experiencing and say it's this and it's always this. No, it's not always that. It could be other things, and it could be other things based on other things. And through that initial orientation, that's how the calibration evolves you, because you're constantly shifting and looking at, okay, what are the values I'm working with, and how is it impacting me now? Not, oh, I've done this before. I've been attuned 10 years ago, and, you know, so I'm good.
That's me done.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't, I mean, maybe for some people it does work good. For me, it's never satisfying.
Yeah, sure. It's that law of diminishing returns, isn't it?
You know, my mind requires to be alert and interested in whatever's in front of me, because we're so full of infinite potential. you want to tap into that whenever you can.
As much as possible. Yeah, exactly. For me, it's that realization. Somewhere along the line, it happened where the formal, again, those air bunnies, watership down, um, the formal idea of an orientation calibration with this idea of something happening and it having volition and it being a conscious process. But then along the way, realizing actually orientation calibration is happening all the time. We are constantly calibrating. And that can be in a formal training environment, but it also just happens in life.
Absolutely.
And if you think about the twisted vine, for example, in the woodland realm, we are carrying this rucksack of rocks around, childhood trauma, life events, the things that have knocked us back, and
Yeah.
all of the cognitive biases that we have, and the being bent and contorted out of shape by, what somebody said to us that day, and etc. etc. All of these rocks go into this rucksack, and we carry this up the vine as we make our way from one layer to another. And it's not until we actually say, to get up to this next layer, I need to grab this rock and just let it go and just get
Right.
rid of it.
Just
And
chuck it.
that,
Yeah.
exactly, that has an emotional response when we do that,
Yeah.
where depending on where we are on the vine, when we pick up that rock and throw it, we will very often have that response. So if you are in the area of anger, when you pick up that rock and throw it, you feel angry. And the rocks that are resonating with that anger and that emotion will be particularly heavy at that point. So grabbing hold of them and getting rid of them and processing them, living that anger for a moment, is really important. And I notice that a lot with creative people before they start a creative endeavor. Very often they will have the biggest temper tantrums. They'll be off, there'll be tears, there'll be like things thrown, and they will go through it. It's like, whoa. But then as soon as they've done that, they'll settle down and they'll start creating. It's because they had to get rid of those rocks, whatever they
It's
were.
almost like purging.
Oh, yeah.
You have to lighten the load so that you can really be prepared for the task. The task being expansion, the task being liberated or freedom to be able to be who you've always been meant to be. I think of the twisted vine as well, and it's how as you climb, as you encounter these various bits and pieces of you, the calibration process actually allows for things to percolate up so that you can face them, so that you can either modify them or chuck them. And sometimes we think, no, we have to hold on to this forever. But as you continue to calibrate, you almost don't have a choice, in that if you're moving forward, you can't go back. It's a forward motion. So part of that growth process is what allows you to expand, even though it's maybe not so much fun to go through at the moment. But the process is rewarding, because not all calibrations are fun.
No.
It's
No,
not,
no.
it's not about, oh, I feel wonderful and, oh, I could just float here forever. No, sometimes, a lot of times, at least for myself personally, it's been lots of swearing and saying, I'm not doing this, but
There have been weeks of my life that I have been a bag of pus, to be quite honest. But that is the nature. And in life, there is this creative tension that exists between the reality of the world and the world we want to create. So whatever that world looks like to you, however you experience that world, the world of your dreams and of your hopes and of your desires, there is a tension that happens like an elastic band.
Mm.
And so many people just allow that elastic band to snap them back to the reality. We hear it all the time. That's not the real world. That's not what life is
Right.
like. But actually, when you hold that creative vision and you calibrate to that vision, then life becomes this constant journey of getting rid of those rocks,
Yeah.
solving those
Yeah.
challenges, exploring further till you get to that creative vision that you hold.
No one can tell you what your internal vision is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks in the grand scheme of things, you know.
Yeah.
You're right. So many people say that's not real. That's hoobly hoobly, or, you know, there's lots of phrases.
Yeah.
But you know what? It doesn't matter.
No.
The inner peace that you can tap into by walking the path, even though it's challenging, you just eventually know within that you are exactly where you need to be, exactly in the shape you need to be in at the moment to be able to receive whatever comes your way to aid in your progression. And again, like I said, it's not always fun, but the end result is always rewarding. I mean, so many times I've said to students, knowing where they're heading into the realms, I would just sometimes say, okay, it's going to be a bumpy ride.
And then some.
And they laugh and they think it's funny. You know, I try to do it. I try to do it with the Harry Potter voice from on the double-decker bus. And I've actually have some students that actually repeat it back to me now. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Yeah, exactly. And when they're sitting there later as bags of pus, swearing and cursing. That to me is the joy of it, you know, like
Yes.
it's I think when you live in that constant need for joy and that constant need for happiness and are unprepared to meander away from that, there is so much that we miss in life.
Yeah.
And I think for me, certainly, you know, one of the most extraordinary journeys with calibration and this idea of or this mission to keep calibrating to a better reality and a future that where you know where people are more compassionate and kinder and are more proactive when looking out for each other and helping each other and growing together in this one life that we get. I think, you know, particularly in modern times and the world that we live in now, which has sort of gone so askew in so many ways and so topsy-turvy, that constant calibration, not only to the vision, but to this contorted reality that we live in. And doing that, no matter how painful, because of wanting them to come together and to sort of that for that tension to bring that contorted reality back to a different reality, to a more compassionate future. And sort of being empathic and very empathic, you know, sort of overly empathic in many ways. I tend to find that a lot of what goes on at the moment is just crushing. It just crushes me and paralyzes me because I'm like, I can't deal with
Yes,
this.
I'm with you. I'm
And
totally with you there. I get it.
absolutely. But still in that paralysis and not really knowing what to do, having the knowledge that there is something bigger than us and
Yeah.
something more compassionate, kinder, more loving, and just more real than we
Right.
can ever imagine. And just enabling that to hold me, if you like, through
Yeah,
sort of
no,
the challenges is quite something.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the state of the world today, is overwhelming. I can't watch the news. I do, but there's sometimes I have to walk out of the room, because I feel it so intensely. And again, we could revert back to, I'm just going to go in my little bubble and just block out everything. And sometimes we do need to seclude ourselves. We need that sanctuary. We need that sacred space to be able to heal and be able to move forward. But, um, you know, the, the, the process of expanding as you calibrate gets you through those times when it's challenging and it's overwhelming and you feel bombarded by the external reality. As you continue to tap in to an expansive position, you get hooked on that. So many of us can get hooked into seeing the stuff that's out there, and you get caught up with the emotions, the contests of this one said that and that one said this, and you make it your reality. It's very addicting, the various social media platforms, the news, you name it, anything external from yourself. All has addictive qualities to it that many of us get hooked into.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
why not get addicted to your inner source, your inner peace, and
yeah,
being able to counteract the balance of what is external,
yeah,
by
absolutely.
fueling with your internal.
Oh,
Again, it's
absolutely.
not easy. There's and we're talking about all these things that you and I practice every day. That's not to say we've arrived.
Oh no.
Um, and there are plenty of times that no one needs to be deceived by my last name. I am of Scottish and Irish heritage, so the blood bubbles really quick. But it's gotten to the point in my life where I see that as opportunities to change.
Yeah,
um, and even though externally there's a lot of stuff, and I use that word, I really would rather use another word, but there's stuff out there that we can change.
absolutely. Oh yeah.
um, People think there are powers out there that are, we have no we have no chance against them. I don't believe that. I really don't. Because if each of us creates within an internal expression that outwardly presents a holistic approach, people will benefit. The world will benefit. One little thing that you think is insignificant can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
It's like that pebble in the pond. The ripples just
They
are
keep
endless.
going.
They just keep going.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And that recognition that we are all in this together, the hierarchical ideology by which we are indoctrinated into this is better, or this person is better or has more power, or that there is this sort of constructed hierarchy, which when we start to think of in holarchy, and we start to sort of realize that balance and that togetherness, we realize that we are all in this together,
yeah,
and through that togetherness comes the power for change.
yeah,
So absolutely vital, particularly in the world as it is at the moment, when things can seem really hopeless,
yeah.
and we feel sometimes set adrift. We where do we go with the world as it is? And the power of the vote doesn't seem like very much in the face of
Right.
that. But there is that sense that when you keep calibrating to that vision of the future, and others join you in that calibration, and you come together, and you create that community of like-minded people who look out for each other and are kind and compassionate to each other, that's where the change comes from.
And there's power there.
Oh, it's immense power, more power than we can ever know in
Right.
our own lifetimes.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But I when I think about social media, you were talking about the social media platforms there. We are very aware that social media is designed to keep constant engagement.
Mm-hmm.
They want your eyes locked on that screen. They want your fingers pressing that like button,
Yeah.
and the algorithms are designed to do that.
Yep.
So what keeps engagement more than extreme thinking? The more the algorithms can take you step by step, moment by moment, like by like, click by click, into a more extreme way of thinking, the more divisive our attitudes become, the more extreme in our views we are, the more we become separate and create this void between us where every statement is completely loaded with so much meaning that opposes other people. The more we do that and are entrained into that way of thinking, the greater there is a need to rebalance, for that force of the scales to balance out and to bring us to a common place where we recognize our similarities rather than our differences. And this is the wonderful thing for me about that connection to Reiki and other forms of energy, force, is that constant leveling. That when I catch myself buying into those extreme ways of thinking and being enchanted by the seemingly innocuous statements that I read, I catch myself and bring myself back, and I process that, and I work with that to come back to that centered place, always looking at the other people in life as being kin, as being somewhere connected and somewhere having a connection with them.
Yeah. It all comes down to choice.
Yeah,
Everyone has a choice, and choose wisely.
exactly.
Because your thought, your intention is powerful.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes. Now, a little birdie tells me that you have prepared an orientation for us. So let's have a little chat about the orientation that you've prepared for us, and for those listening in to experience. For me, it's such a wonderful thing because so often the orientation calibration process is in this training environment, and very often a formal training environment. So, for example, attunements in a Sui Reiki, empowerments, entrainments, orientation calibrations, they are seen as part of a training environment where you are building towards a professional qualification to treat or train other people. But the wonderful thing for me about orientation calibration is how we apply it to everyday life, just how it helps us and offers us value in our understanding of how we can approach things in life. So you approaching an orientation for us here in the tavern is something that's really intriguing and fascinating for me, because it will help us to create a calibration and to calibrate towards something that is more effective in everyday life rather than being in the context of a training or a formal qualification environment.
Right. Right. I think for those of you who have never experienced an orientation, this will be very different, and hopefully very exciting. For those of the listeners that have experienced orientations, you're going to put your seatbelt on and get ready to go. But back to those who have not experienced it, it's going to be a journey for you in which I will walk you down a path and point out various bits and pieces. And each of us has a library within our own minds of various images. If I say words, you're going to have for sure something that will come to mind, a place, a scent, perhaps, and even a person. So as I walk you through this orientation, you will hopefully experience a wide variety of images, perhaps, where you will be able to think to yourself, what does this mean to me? Why am I being shown this? Where am I going? Why is this important? Why is this here? It's a lot of open-ended questions that I hope you'll be asking yourself, as well as relaxing and enjoying. Ultimately, the goal is to bring you to a point where you might be experiencing bits and pieces of yourself that you never knew existed, and embrace it with such joy that will have you coming back wanting more, which is part of your calibration process. So if you feel yourself investigating, you feel yourself questioning, you feel yourself saying, what is this? You're calibrating. And so, yay, you've accomplished the goal for that orientation. But the good news is it's never ending. So even though towards the end, you'll hear me walk you out of the orientation, your calibration will continue, because it does it once the on button is pressed, it doesn't shut off. So it's a wonderful thing.
And that sort of coming back to that experience as well, that's, you know, always a sense of calibration when you remember it or think about it or process some little part, like little nugget of that experience. That's always the calibration. Or when someone in life randomly comes up to you and causes you to question that
Yes.
calibration that you've had, that's also a calibration.
Yes.
It's showing you an example of life where
the universe is amazing. That is a forewarning, in a good way, that when you are oriented, or for that matter, if you decide to go through any of the one therapy training, the universe has a way of providing a plethora of situations for you to examine as it relates to what perhaps you just listened to, what you just saw, what you just wrote in your journal. The universe is going to knock on your door and say, hello, shall we have a chat?
Let's have tea.
Oh, in case you didn't think you knew what the universe was trying to show you, this will show you that you're spot on, and get ready for more.
Exactly, yeah. And for people who have experienced an attunement in the past, maybe an Usui Reiki attunement or some other form of attunement, this process can be very different because it is that guided process. Linda, you'll be guiding people through. I remember with the Usui Reiki attunement, lots of hand positions and moving about and blowing and things like that going on. There's none of that happening, but there is this constant guidance and imagery, and hopefully the creation of synesthesia and ideesthesia that can help people create their own journeys within the journey.
That's actually a topic for another day, is synesthesia.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm so there. That might be a long time in the tavern, that one.
That's okay. That's another addictive quality.
Oh, yeah. Definitely that. Yeah. But that sort of constant coming back to and calibration of is something that we don't necessarily have in Usui Reiki, because there is this sense of an attunement, and once that's done, you are attuned, you are connected, and that's it. But the orientation can be be guided through that as many times as you like. The calibration process is a lifelong process that you keep coming back to.
Right. And you know, something you just said about, you know, the attunement, once it's done, and Reiki flow has been, you know, I don't even know how to say it because obviously I didn't experience, but the Reiki flows through, I that kind of makes me, I don't know, shudder almost, because it's like Reiki is everywhere. So it's you flowing through it.
Yeah. What does it
And
flow into if it's not?
yeah. So what do you have, like a Teflon? You're not, you're not permeable. Like, what does that mean? I think of contacts, it's air permeable. That's Reiki can get anywhere. It's always everywhere.
Yeah. And so I think I'm going to be heading off into the night, but I know that you want to stay a while
Yes.
with our friends.
Yes, yes. And as always, I really enjoy our times together. I can't make it any clearer that when we meet at the Wayfarers Tavern, it's just wonderful. So we need to do this again really soon.
Oh yeah.
So I say goodbye to you as well. Be safe. Take care as you go venture out into the night. And for the rest of you, why don't we all head back to that little nook by the fire where I was sitting. It's quiet and cozy, and I can bring you on a journey that hopefully you will find very enchanting.
Right. Are we all gathered? A few words before we start. Please be sure to listen to this during a time when you won't be disturbed or need to be responsible for yourself or others. Nor listen to this whilst driving. Find your most comfortable position. I see there are some great floor pillows as well as comfy chairs all around this little spot. So find your place and let's begin. As you sit in this place, this little nook, in a little tavern, far away from the stresses of a complicated life, you breathe deeply, feeling the warming glow of the open fire permeate your body, soothing away any tension from your muscles, calming your mind as you simply relax. You think of all the people who have sat in this very seat over hundreds of years, the lives they have lived and conversations they have had, the paupers who have come in from the driving snow to warm themselves by the fire and spend their last penny on a nip of brandy, the wealthy merchants who had too many tipples and lost their way back in ways that no money could help them navigate. The cut purses and the mystical, the hag and adventurer, the lost and the found. So many have sat here before you, so many lives and voices calling to you. But today, one voice sings louder than all the others. It is the call of the wild ocean, the great dark mystery of wave and water. You find yourself now within a small seafarer's cottage by the shore, the walls weathered by centuries of the ocean's fury. As you sit enveloped by this tiny sanctuary, the sun shines fiercely outside, rays of light bursting through a small window in front of you. Encapsulated here for a moment, on this bright and calm day, you relax. Take a deep breath and watch minute particles of dust sparkle as they meander through the warm sunshine. You take in your surroundings. An old iron kettle on the fire. Faint wisps of steam twisting their way from the spout and into nothingness as they rise up. The large oak table before you, how the grain rambles and converges into mesmerizing patterns. The cool stone walls that wrap around you in a soothing embrace, like balm for your mind, your heart, and your essence. Another deep, slow breath deep into your lungs, feeling your stomach expand to the sides as if you are inhaling into the very base of your spine, the deepest region of your gut. You glance back to the diamonds in the shafts of sun, and they guide you to the window, to the beach, to the sea. In this cottage, in this bubble, you suddenly become aware of how big it all is. Walking upon the sands that stretch into the distance in both directions, to the ocean that today gently laps at your feet, to the horizon that dominates your vision, a stark line between the earth and the sky. This place, this home, is all that you know. Every moment was made here. Each grain of sand tussled by the soft caress of water. Every storm-whipped sky. Clouds contorted into the ethereal bodies of tropospheric vapor. Where do these sands lead? What exists beyond that laceration, that surgically precise incision between above and below? What emotions stir within you as you all at once exist between everything you know and a drop of water, rainbow refracted in the luminescence of our star? All life that has ever been, from the mightiest creature to the smallest organism deep within the ocean, to a newborn baby that was you, overwhelmed by all the light and sound and weight of gravity's pull. All you are, have ever been, and can ever be is a speck of dust in a cottage, by the sea, in this room, at a table, encompassed by walls of rock and a person that is you. You are here. You notice a framed picture on the wall. Somehow juxtaposed the pale stone which laps upon the shore of its wooden frame, the frame that cuts a line between the shore and the ocean. the dark silhouette of waves wrenched into the air by a raging tempest, outlines snatched from the blackness by a jagged crash of light pleading for the addition of sound. A cacophony of thunder with which to dance this eon-old ballet. This clitch of lovers, desperately entwined together for a fleeting moment of time before the shroud of inky oblivion rips them apart, as death is to the soulmates who searched millennia, bereft until in a moment they were found, all but a moment before the Reaper took them back into that icy grasp. Within this raw, unfeeling embrace, a ship soars to the pinnacle of a wave, the gleaming foam of equine form barreling around the exposed keel, manifesting the force of this mighty squall and heralding the approach of an inescapable death. The moment, that precipice, where all the world holds its breath and waits. You suddenly stand upon the deck of this ship, feet sinking gradually into the timber. Mycelial tendrils grow from you and into the wood, between the tiniest crevices of the grain, rambling and converging, wandering for a moment before returning to oneness. This ship is alive. It is part of you as you are part of it. Gaining strength from this oneness, you hold your position, resolute, strident against the wrath unleashed upon this ship, sailing this ocean within this trice. Propelled into the air, another scar of light slashes at the night, and the ship is thrown high into the air. You become weightless, fervently rooted to the wood beneath you, as a tree defiant against the fray. You float in the air, ascending with immeasurable droplets of water as your companion. Time slows, and as you hover here, supported and yet suspended as an infinitesimal fragment of dust within a sunbeam. The incandescent lightning reveals all to you. The raging sky, the cloud-capped surf, the sturdy sanctuary of your vessel. High masts, billowing sails, thick bow, resolute in course. As far as your eyes can see, all is illuminated and connected. You touch the lightning, and the full force is yours to possess. You feel the electricity course through you as you open your mouth, and a roar of thunder bellows from you. Not simply from your chest, your throat, your mouth, but through the bones of your face, your hands and feet, your very core. sound booms through your entire body, blaring out of every pore. You are a force of nature, a battle cry, a storm, the likes of which no one has ever known. The blast wave of your thundercrack detonates your surroundings into an explosive barrage of movement at each droplet. Every high wave, even the clouds above, are violently wrenched away as if a spherical wall shunted them into abeyance. The sun slices through the space your voice created, and you are bathed in warmth, so delicious it acts as a salve on every part of you. The roar of all you are, your force, your power, falls silent as a whisper. That sound, a mournful lament, an exhilarating call to arms, a soaring aria of transformation, a proclamation of all you are, becomes a delicate zephyr, a gentle murmur of delight, the lapping of salt water upon the sands or trickling down a flushed cheek, the soothing blanket of atonement, a sigh of vindication, a word that can change the world. And carried by this long exhale, you plunge down into the ocean, becoming one with every molecule of water and all life that exists here. The magnificent pressure on every aspect of your being cradles you, keeping you safe and supported as you descend into the comforting blackness below, primal and omnipresent. As the water within you and the water without equalize, you feel the grip of the force in every fiber of your being, and you leverage it to ring your message from the deepest depths of your being. As you connect to the very gut of the earth, you begin absorbing the weight of the water, allowing it to create extreme depth in your body, your voice, your message. This force is yours to command, to implement as a leader of all who encounter your presence. Harnessing the forces around you, you are captivating, charismatic, incandescent when harnessing your lightning, awe-inspiring, powerful, and perpetually enduring through harnessing the crescendo of your thunder. Life-affirming, momentous, cathartic by harnessing the gravitas of the ocean. At one of these forces, you forge ahead, clearing your path, conquering the storm, changing heart and minds as you rise up. Break through and propel by your voice, your body, and your very life purpose. You fly. Find yourself back in the tavern, listening to the calming, rhythmic ticking of the clock. The fire warming your skin, permeating to the very core of your body, and bringing you back to the room you are in. As you gradually heat up, you come back to the room fully, moving your fingers and toes, rolling your shoulders, and beginning to stretch. Now, take a long, slow, deep breath, crystallizing your calibration into the real world. Be fully aware and ready to go on with your day. And when the time is right, open your eyes and reflect upon your adventure.
thank you, everyone, for joining us at the Wayfarer's Tavern.
Now, as always,
Be
enchanted.
You've been listening to the It's Reiki But Not As You Know It podcast, hosted by Martyn Pentecost, originator of One Therapy, and Linda Hadzinski, guide and companion to the One Therapy community. Find out more and join in the conversation at onetherapy.com. one-therapy.com. It's Reiki, but not as you know it.